4:30 having arrived, we'll call to order the Finance Committee meeting of Monday, June 1st, 2026, and ask Director Schmidt-Akita to please call the roll.
Council President Madison.
Here.
Alder Verveer.
Here.
Alder Vitever.
Here.
Alder Evers.
Here.
Alder Lankella.
Here.
Alder O'Brien.
Here.
Mary of Quorum.
Thank you. So our first item is public comment. I don't believe we have any general public comment. So are there any disclosures or recusals on today's agenda? Seeing none, I would like to disclose that on for item 5, which is Legistar 93119, my partner is an employee of Slipstream, but I have not been involved in either the crafting of the RFP or the selection of the contract, and will not be involved in the oversight of the contract either. Seeing no other disclosures or recusals, we'll move on to the consent agenda. I believe we have speakers on item 14, and we will also be separating item 15. Are there other items that members of the body would like to see separated? Alder Madison.
Thanks, Mayor. Item 2.
Item 2. Separate item 2. Just give me a second here to double check. All right. Thank you, Alder. Are there any other items that members of the body would like to see separated from the consent agenda? All right, then, sorry, we also do have a speaker on item 2, so that would be separated anyway. Just double checking that we don't have speakers on anything else. So then on the consent agenda, we'll be separating items 2, 14, and 15. President Madison, a motion, please.
Motion to adopt the consent agenda.
Second. There's a second. Moved and seconded to adopt the consent agenda. Is there any objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor of the consent agenda? Seeing no objection, we'll adopt those items and the recommendations therein. And we'll start then with item 2, which is Legistar 93167, approving an extension of a provisional appointment for Aramate Glass from June 8th, 2026, until such time as the position of independent police monitor is filled on a permanent basis, or March 31st, 2027. On item 2, we have one registrant wishing to speak. Nakia Wiley of District 6. Do we have Nakia?
Mayor, I don't see Nakia in attendance.
Okay. Are there questions for any of the registrants that are present on this item? Seeing none, then President Madison, a motion on item 2, please.
Motion to adopt.
Second. Just moved and seconded to adopt. On item 2, are there questions for staff? President Madison.
Thanks, Mayor. If I can just ask our Director of HR she attached a brief presentation. If you could just give an overview of the hiring process for the permanent IM and where things are at now and what are the foreseeable next steps. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for this. I did submit just earlier today a short memo just outlining, I apologize for that, short memo just outlining some of the background and some of the next steps related to that hiring process. Are you all hearing my dogs? I'm sorry. I apologize.
No, we can't hear them.
Somebody rang the door. Okay. They're going bananas in the background. So this is a relatively standard extension. I will note that when I.M. Coakley left in October, indicated they were leaving, we did talk to the PCOB at that time. Rather than simply appoint someone to that position, they wish to hire an interim in to complete a full, robust process for that position as is required by the ordinances. And so to hire an interim through a job posting in order to have that person act as the hiring manager. That person, Arami Glass, started in December, as I'm sure you all know. And when right about the time that she started, and right as her provisional appointment was being finalized, we realized that she would not be eligible for some of the benefits if we did not anticipate a 12-month process. I will say that even a 9-month process was an aggressive timeline for a committee. And so we were comfortable anticipating that. There's no problem in shortening it if you can after you've anticipated it, but we did anticipate it at the time. And so that did allow us to slow down just for a couple of months to make sure I.M. Glass was fully onboarded before starting that hiring process. There was a lot to learn because we were able to get someone with both I.M. experience as well as oversight and office managerial experience. So I.M. Glass started in December. In March, we started that hiring process more in earnest with a meeting with I.M. Glass and PCOB Chair Pearson, and began planning for that process. I will share that those initial steps were really just us sort of communicating about what the process is, informing the PCOB about what the process is. Eventually, we met with a small group who helped us develop a timeline, which is attached to this item in the agenda, the next steps of which are for a robust community engagement process that I.M. Glass will be leading over the summer, along with support of any appropriate subcommittees of the PCOB. And in June, that's just later this month, there is a PCOB meeting where they will finalize the minimum qualifications for the position. They will approve the timeline, and they will create the hiring committee that will be engaged in the equitable hire plan. We will conduct an initial equitable hire plan meeting this month. And then over the course of the PCOB specifically had asked for a little more time to engage their community partners over the summer. So we did extend it just a month or two in order to do that because they had to sort of meet and plan it before they could engage it. And so we anticipate that process taking through the rest of the summer. with the final job posting and the position to be posted in September. That will be going back to their committee for approval. We will then be working with other participants of that equitable hire plan to finalize the rest of the process. Hoping to have initial interviews in November, final interviews, and a selection made by the PCOB in December. We would then engage our standard process, which includes negotiation of the agreement, reference checks, background checks. And you would see as a first item for consideration probably in January, the contract, the negotiated contract for approval. In January, we would hope to have that person start as early as February with potentially up to 6 weeks of double fill to allow for that person to gain some of the insight that's necessary from IM Glass prior to leaving. So effectively, this goes until March. If any portion of that process takes a little bit longer, we would likely reduce that double fill period by a bit in order to accommodate getting it in before that March deadline. If not, I would anticipate that we would come back to you in January for another extension. But I don't anticipate that that's needed at this point, given where we are in the process. Are there other questions?
Alder Evers, questions?
Yes, thank you, Mary. And thank you, Director Hilson, for your plain language memo. By the way, I would like all our staff to issue plain language memos instead of complicated memos. That was very helpful. I appreciate it.
It was a lot of work for someone who's been in HR for a lot of years.
But it was helpful. It sounds like we're a little behind schedule in terms of the hiring process. Is that fair to say?
I would say we're maybe a month or two. Ideally, I think we would have had our equitable hire plan meeting in April or May. But some of that has to do with the committee schedule and the fact that the committee itself only meets on a quarterly basis right now. So when we got to planning it, sort of fitting in what we needed their actual decision making on in the months that they're at their meeting, made this sort of end up being the best possible schedule. We do know that we can set up a special meeting if we need to in case something pushes a little bit past a deadline or something like that.
And you say that you met with the IM and the PCOB chair to go over this proposed timeline, and is it fair to say there's buy-in, there's an agreement that this timeline is reasonable? Or everybody bought into this?
This was not the original timeline. The original timeline was slightly more aggressive. I think with a hire maybe in November versus January. But the feedback that we got from not just the chair or the IM, but the PCOB is that they just needed a bit more time on the community engagement and on the front of this process.
Well, I appreciate that. One of the things that I'm a bit concerned about, or I noted in the emails that were uploaded into Legistar, the long email train, there was a point where you cautioned that if the current interim IM were to apply and seek the position as a permanent IM, it could open up the city and to possibility of lawsuits. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, you did. I wanted the committee to know that while there wasn't anything that made it against the law, there were a number of reasons it was somewhat ill-advised and could open up some liability. I subsequently received an email from Chair Pearson indicating that that was not the case and that she would be fulfilling that I Am Glass would be fulfilling all responsibilities as the hiring manager as originally planned.
So in your mind, there's not cause for alarm. There's no about a potential conflict of interest or anything like that.
No, I'm hopeful about the process. I think our ability to get someone in there on an interim basis was had its own challenges, and so the fact that we have someone there with the experience that she has and her ability to run a thoughtful process makes me feel pretty confident about it.
Well, that's all.
I would have been concerned if that hadn't been the decision, but with that decision, that resolves any concerns that I have.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Matthews, questions?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'm sorry if I missed this, but I think it sounded like you were saying that the at least 12-month period was, if not like the very first plan, was something that everyone on, your side and the PCOB and stuff have known about for like a while, right? Like it's been kind of the idea for a while.
Yeah, this is not, I realize that some of the questions that have come up might have raised some concern, but the fact that we were going to need to extend this is something that I've known since January or February. Even when the mayor is the decision maker, getting a 6-month process is next to impossible. So I knew an extension would be necessary. Whether that would be an additional 6 months or 9 months, I wasn't sure, but I will say yes, I fully anticipated requesting this extension back in December and January.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Madison, questions?
Oh, yeah, just a quick question. Just going back to Alder Matthews' question. I know that it sounds like you and the PCOB and likely the chair, you all were aware, but alders weren't necessarily aware just yet about the potential to need to extend. So I guess my question is how soon, just in case it needs to be extended again, where in that process do you think it would make the most sense to just at minimum, just to update the memo so all alders are kind of like, because this is one with a lot of just to keep folks updated.
Yeah, that's fair. I think we would know if there's not able to be a committee meeting with a decision in December, if there needs to be another extension. So probably 3 to 4 months early, we would be able to make the request for an additional extension if needed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Any other questions on item 2 for staff? Alder Figueroa Cole?
Thank you, Mayor. So on that situation about another extension, I just wanted to make sure that I understand. I definitely do not want to have to ask Attorney Haas what my intent was today, 6 months from now. So I see one of the clauses mentions the date of March 31st. And actually the memo says that the fiscal note mentions the March 31st, 27, and it uses position is filled on permanent basis or until March 31st, 2027. But then at the bottom of the resolution, then it says the monitor is filled on a permanent basis and is authorized until March 31st, 2027. So the and the or, like it sounds like if this is not gonna happen by March 31st, you're gonna come back to us for another extension. I just wanna make sure that that's clear.
That's correct. In December, I would come back. I'd probably ask for it to be introduced in December. I doubt I could get it all the way through, given that there's typically just one meeting in December, but I would introduce by December a request for an extension if I anticipate that it can't be completed by March 31st.
All right, thank you so much, appreciate it.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Pritchett, questions? Alder, you're muted.
Knowing that the position was initially for 6 months, but also knowing too that the applicant probably would not proceed with it, especially without benefits. The question that I have is, knowing that the period for employment, it would now be 12 months, and that an extension would be possible. Were there or are there plans for a performance evaluation, midterm or towards the end of, let's say, the period of employment, which would now expire, if I'm not mistaken, in March of 2027?
Thank you, Alder. You would need to ask that of the PCOB. We don't require that, nor would I say is it standard for us to have an evaluation for a provisional appointment, because a provisional appointment is by nature at-will employment and can be terminated at any time. I would ask that committee if that's their intention. Certainly, the Human Resources Department assisted the PCOB in creating an evaluation for the permanent IM prior to this interim IM coming on board, so we could certainly assist with that if needed.
So I'm hearing you say then that that's within the purview of the PCOB to do a performance evaluation, absent this being a permanent position, that this is a provisional appointment. Therefore, a performance evaluation would not be conducted, and if conducted, it is within the purview of the PCOB. Is that correct?
Sort of, that's what I'm saying. Not exactly correct. What I'm saying is that we don't traditionally do an evaluation of provisional staff, but the PCOB could elect to if they want to.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. No other questions from alders, and I am glass. We're still in questions. So, absent further questions, item 2 has been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Seeing no discussion, item 2 has been moved and seconded. Is there any objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor? Seeing no objection, we'll record a unanimous vote in favor of item 2, and we will move on to item 14, which is Legistar 92735, amending the 2026 Economic Development Division capital budget, and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute a development agreement to fund a tax incremental finance loan to assist in the renovation and development of office, manufacturing, and research and development space for Rialta Fusion at 910 Mayor Avenue in the project plan area of TID 54. On item 14, we have one speaker wishing to speak. Dominic Bindle of District 9, representing Rialta Fusion. Do we have Dominic?
Yes, I'm here, Mayor Rose Conway.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for the time, and thank you, Finance Committee, for the opportunity to speak. Again, my name is Dominic Bindle. I'm the Vice President of Technical Development at Rialta Fusion, and I'm pleased to be here for this afternoon's discussion of Rialta's TIP application. To inform today's discussion, I'd like to share a little bit of context on Rialta's goals and our near-term plans. At Rialta, our goal is to make fusion energy available as an energy source for the planet. Fusion is the power source of the universe. It lights every star in the sky and allows our sun to shine. Fusion as an Earth-based power source holds immense promise, and harnessing it would mark a new chapter for humanity. Fusion produces zero carbon emissions. It can provide baseload power, rain or shine, day or night. Fusion does not rely on imported fuels, and it is fundamentally safe. Researchers have been working to harness fusion for over 70 years. The rate of scientific breakthroughs has accelerated recently, and now a private fusion ecosystem has emerged to translate scientific advances into a commercial reality. More than 50 companies worldwide have raised over $10 billion of private capital in a race to build the first fusion power plant. Rialta Fusion is one of those companies. Rialta spun out of the University of Wisconsin-Madison in late 2022. Our roadmap to deliver a first commercial fusion power plant is divided into 3 phases, each of which will require its own dedicated facility. Phase 1 uses University of Wisconsin facilities. Phase 2 involves a prototype device at a Rialta facility, the Forge. And in Phase 3, we will build a fusion power plant at a purpose-built facility. Rialta is currently in Phase 1. We are the sole sponsor of research on a University of Wisconsin-based fusion machine called WHAM. WHAM is just one of 5 university-scale fusion systems on campus, and Rialta operates the system alongside University of Wisconsin staff and students. Looking ahead, Rialta is working toward Phase 2. To complete the development of our power plant, Rialta needs a prototype device, similar to WHAM, but at a commercial scale. This prototype device is not a power plant. It will not generate energy, it will not run continuously, and it will not use fusion fuel. Instead, it will focus on proving that we can achieve conditions that will sustain fusion at a future power plant. In Phase 2, we will build and operate this prototype at the Forge alongside supporting R&D equipment and manufacturing capabilities. We are in the final stages of selecting the site for the Forge, and we are aiming to break ground this year. We intend to invest tens of millions of dollars into the facility and hundreds of millions more into the research equipment that will operate there. Beyond initial construction jobs, the Forge will employ hundreds of people on a permanent basis, physicists and engineers, technicians, operators, and tradespeople, all working on campus. I'm here this afternoon because the former Oscar Mayer facility on Madison's east side is a candidate site for the Forge. We are genuinely grateful for the support that Matthew Miklajewski, Dan Rolfs, and the broader city staff have extended to us throughout this process. Their engagement has been thoughtful, professional, and genuinely helpful. I'm happy to be here, and I welcome any questions the committee may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the registrant or any of the other folks registered to answer? President Madison.
Thanks, Mayor. For Dominic Bindle, I just wanted to ask more so about the recruitment for the kinds of jobs that your company will need to hire. What does that look like?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Our recruitment is phase dependent as well. In the early phases of our work, we have been recruiting for some of those specialized roles with very small, niche applicant pools, physicists and engineers. In the near term to midterm, though, we are increasingly hiring people across a much broader range of disciplines, including individuals who are coming to join our team with no experience at all.
And then just one quick follow-up question. I know there have been other local companies that may partner with local organizations to help them with recruitment. How do you see do you see your company doing sort of the same thing maybe?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Growing our team is a central challenge for us, and we welcome all of the support we can get from local community and other professional organizations. And we also have a vested interest in partnering with local community organizations to develop talent and to establish training programs to invite the local community into that workforce.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Are there any other questions for the registrant? If not, thank you very much. And then on item 14, President Madison, a motion, please.
Motion to adopt.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there a second? Thank you. Moved and seconded to adopt. Are there any questions for staff on item 14? Now, I'll remind us that we're notice to go into closed session if we want to talk about negotiation, but if we just want to talk about the item itself, we don't need to. Other Figueroa Cole questions?
I'm not sure if staff has a presentation, an overview to provide on what the deal is and what are we offering, what are we expecting on this particular deal. That would be great.
Let's see, Director Mikolajewski.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Alders. I do have a brief presentation that I can provide that gives an overview of the project and also JobsTIF more generally. And I'll just share screen here. All right. Again, good evening, members of the Finance Committee. For those watching at home, I'm Matt Mikolajewski, the Economic Development Director for the city. I'm also joined this evening by Dan Rolfs, our Real Estate Development Manager, as well as Assistant City Attorney Matt Robles that worked on this project. And we'd be happy to answer questions at the conclusion of this presentation. So again, this evening, just want to provide an overview of JobsTIF and the project that's before you. JobsTIF is a part of the city's TIF policy. It's been around since 2014. And through the JobsTIF program, we're able to provide financial support to businesses generating at least 100 new employment positions with a commitment to keep those positions for 5 years. And the program can be used for employers that are generating new taxable value, new increment, either through new building projects or renovations. In many ways, the JobsTIF program is similar to our general developer-funded TIF that you're familiar with. The city needs to determine a but-for. The project needs to generate enough increment to support itself, so it needs to be self-supporting, and the developer needs to provide an increment guarantee. There are some key ways, though, that JobsTIF is different from developer-funded TIF. First, in developer-funded TIF, the but-for is based on a financial gap, taking a look at sources and uses of funding. In the case of JobsTIF, the but-for is determined on a competitive basis. But for the investment of TIF, the project is going to locate outside the city of Madison. For a JobsTIF project, the project is eligible to receive up to 40% of the net present value of increment that it generates. For developer-funded TIF, we use a benchmark of 55% of the increment generated by the project. This is really important to note that, the developer or the business is eligible to receive 40% of the net present value. That does mean that 60% of the net present value is available for other city needs, whether it be infrastructure, affordable housing, small business programs. And then finally, for JobsTIF, projects must create and retain jobs. That's not the case for developer-funded TIF. The city has used its JobStiff program 3 times in the past. Extreme Engineering, Illumina, and Exact Sciences all received financial support through this program. In all cases, those companies created and retained jobs in excess of what was pledged over that 5-year period. In all cases, the TIF loans were fully repaid by the increment generated by the respective projects. I should also mention in the case of Illumina and Exact Sciences being located within TID 46, I indicated before that businesses are eligible for 40% of the net present value of the increment. The city can use the 60% that remains for other projects. And because of the increment generated by those projects in TID 46, we were actually able to fund a substantial portion of the West Side BRT station construction out of that TID district because we had those financial resources that were being generated through increment from these companies choosing to locate within that TID 46 boundary. So the city, in addition to benefiting from the jobs and the tax base at the project site specifically, that's a great example of how we were able to benefit more broadly in the community by completing projects that we wanted to complete as a city. This project involves nuclear fusion. So just want to take a moment to talk a little bit about nuclear fusion. Nuclear fusion, unlike fission, is the process of combining atoms, such as hydrogen atoms, and it results in the production of energy, helium, and only a small amount of short-lived radioactive material, similar to the type of short-lived radioactive material that we find in local hospitals and other healthcare centers. And as a result, this is a very clean and safe form of energy production. Fusion only occurs in a very controlled environment. As such, there's no possibility of any type of a meltdown or runaway reaction like we see with fission. And again, there's no long-lived, high-level radioactive waste for nuclear fusion. There's, as mentioned earlier, decades of research at UW-Madison in this area, with 5 current nuclear fusion experiments happening on campus today. Rialto Fusion, as mentioned earlier, is a company with strong ties to UW, and the purpose of this project, the FORGE project, is to scale up the research of electric generation through nuclear fusion. As indicated by Dominic, Rialto Fusion will not be producing electricity at this facility through this project, but they will be completing the research and development necessary to hopefully one day commercialize a product that can generate electricity via fusion. Rialto is already located on the west side of Madison. They're using a demonstrated nuclear fusion technology, and they're currently raising funds to scale up the company's research. They're searching for a location to do this additional research work. Oscar Mayer is one of the facilities under consideration, but they're also considering property in Illinois. And as we know, the Oscar Mayer facility has been vacant now for a long time, and there are significant costs that are needed to transform that facility from its former use to a new modern facility that could meet Rialto Fusion's needs, or really the needs of any business. And this is really the crux of the but-for discussion for this proposal, is that not only are we competing with Illinois to locate this project, but the site that we're competing with has some deficiencies. It's old, it's out of date, it needs significant work to transform again, from Oscar Mayer to a new use. And so, but for TIF, but for an investment of TIF, this project won't occur. Talking a little bit more about what that project is at the former Oscar Mayer facility, it's significant. It would utilize 50,000 square feet of office space, over 100,000 square feet of research and development space, with an additional 45,000 square feet of some manufacturing space. At a minimum, 43 full-time jobs would be retained, and a minimum of 157 new jobs would be created. The taxable value of the property we anticipate increasing by over $50 million. And the reason for this is because the company needs to invest over $60 million in transforming the building from its former use to a new facility that the company can utilize. And that doesn't include any of Rialto Fusion's equipment, which could exceed $500 million. that $60+ million is just physical improvements to the building that Rialta Fusion would make. So in addition to the new employment that would be generated, there would be a significant upgrade to that facility through this project. Taking a closer look at the jobs, again, 43 jobs retained, 157 new jobs created. These jobs are everything from management to manufacturing to lab and research jobs. And the predicted salaries are in many cases significantly above the median household income for Dane County. Taking a look at the site plan here, Rialta Fusion is proposing to occupy the areas that are generally noted in orange. So if the bottom of your screen is basically the parking lot that's there today. So if you're looking at the Oscar Mayer facility, they would utilize the entire north office tower, which is building 27A, and then the former manufacturing and warehouse space immediately adjacent that you can see here on the map. This is just an aerial looking at the existing building. Again, this is as if you're standing in the parking lot in front of the old Oscar Mayer. So you can see they're taking that old north office tower and then a significant amount of the former manufacturing and warehouse space directly adjacent to it. So what is the proposed jobs TIF project in this case? The city we are proposing through this resolution to invest $2.8 million, and it would be payable over 6 payments based on the performance of Rialta. And this is something that's very important to highlight, is that this is a post-performance jobs TIF loan. They need to demonstrate that they're generating value and jobs prior to receiving payments. So for example, they would receive their first payment after generating $17.5 million of value, their second payment after generating $30.5 million of value and 50 jobs, and then continuing through 6 payments, which would provide the full $2.8 million in 200 jobs. After they receive their last payment, they need to retain and create those jobs for a 5-year period. And as we've done in the past, we would audit on an annual basis their payroll to confirm that they're doing so. This is a 3-party agreement between the City of Madison, Rialta Fusion, as well as the property owner, OM Station LLC. Rialta Fusion will be leasing space, not purchasing space in this case. And so the owner of the property, OM Station LLC, will continue to be part of the transaction. Our loans will actually flow from the city to OM Station LLC and then to Rialta Fusion. There are 2 forms of security that the city will have, assuming that for whatever reason, increment is not enough to repay the loans. The first will be a mortgage recorded against the property, and Rialta Fusion will also provide the city with a corporate guarantee. Future assistance may be possible if their investment exceeds what they're anticipating. So if they start generating a value greater than $53 million, if they generate employment above 200 full-time equivalent positions, the city may consider future assistance. And it's important to highlight that this project and this proposal meets the TIF policy. There are no exceptions being requested. There are some other considerations for this project, more land use related. First, the experiments that are going to be completed by Rialta Fusion on the site would utilize a significant amount of electricity. Rialta Fusion is in active communication with Madison Gas and Electric. They will likely need to pay for some upgrades, and also they're working through to make sure that the pulses of electricity they use in their experiments don't have any impact on the grid. Water isn't used significantly in nuclear fusion. There really won't be any significant traffic, and there won't be any noise, smells, or other impacts of these experiments on the public. So if you're driving by or walking by or taking a bus adjacent to the property, you won't know that these experiments are occurring within the building. Staff recommends that the Finance Committee and Common Council approve this transaction and move forward with this TIF loan agreement for 4 principal reasons. First, we believe that this is a very reasonable investment in TIF in a property that's been vacant since 2017. That but for the city investing TIF in the former Oscar Mayer property and in Rialto Fusion, we are likely not going to see that property redevelop anytime soon. So this is really a great opportunity to secure 200 plus family supporting jobs, a great way to start generating additional property tax revenue off of this property and really bring this property back to life and be once again contributing to the north side and the broader city. Second, Rialto Fusion is part of a burgeoning industry of fusion technology. If Rialto Fusion locates in Madison, it's very likely that some of the businesses as part of their supply chain, as well as other fusion companies, will decide to locate here as well. And so similar to the biotech cluster and the IT cluster that we have within Madison, this is an opportunity to grow a new industry sector that can provide employment and tax base, not just here, but elsewhere throughout the community. As a city, we're committed to identifying cleaner forms of energy, and the research that Rialto Fusion would be completing at this site does just that. And one day, assuming the research is successful, will hopefully lead to some commercialization of electric generation that is the type of electricity that the city is very interested in seeing for our personal operations as a city. And then finally, this transaction meets the city's TIF policy, and it's both structured in a way that supports Rialto Fusion and their expansion over time, but also provides some security to the city by the guarantees and by contributing only 40% of the net present value of the increment that we anticipate being generated. With that, I will stop sharing, and myself, Matt Robles, Dan Rolfs are all available to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Questions for staff? President Madison.
Just one quick one. On the slide where you mentioned ensuring that MG is working with you all to make sure the grid isn't impacted, can you just explain that a little bit more in plain language for me? Is this to ensure that no immediate neighbors are impacted by cost, is what I'm assuming?
Yes, both cost and also just the active functioning of the electric grid while the experiments are occurring, so that no one in the neighborhood or in the broader city experiences any type of fluctuation in electric distribution as they're working on their experiments.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Just make sure I'm clarifying. And not covering the costs, the cost won't be passed off to immediate neighbors as well, right?
Yes, that's correct. Some of the additional upgrades that Rialto Fusion would require to do their experiments, they will need to pay for some of those upgrades to occur.
Thank you.
Just to be clear, the city doesn't have jurisdiction over electric rates or infrastructure, but we are aware of those conversations happening between MG&E and Rialto, but we don't have any jurisdiction there.
Well, just then a follow-up question. If in those discussions, it becomes known that immediate neighbors would have to incur some of the costs, I would assume this would come back to us or we would get an update or then
that's not how it works.
I just want to make sure that no one is eating the cost for that.
Well, I think we all agree, but that is under the jurisdiction of the Public Service Commission. And it's not a question of immediate neighbors. It's a question of all MG&E ratepayers.
Gotcha. I'm going to circle back for another discussion, a longer discussion then. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Figueroa-Cole, questions?
Thank you for the presentation. And I was going to ask this on the side, but since we're talking about it, I just got maybe a dumb question. So is this technology not compatible with the use of solar use versus the MG&E? Can you answer that?
So is the question that are they able to use electricity generated by solar power to complete the experiments? Is that the question?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I'm not an expert, and maybe Dominic can chime in if he's still on the call, but these experiments do require a significant amount of electricity. So I suspect that that solar would not be a path forward, that they could do that. Although if they are using, I mean, they will be using MG&E electricity, and some of MG&E electricity is generated via solar. So it is likely that there is going to be some solar generated electricity incorporated into those experiments.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. And again, thanks for the presentation. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Alder. And Dominic, I see you have your hand raised, but we're on to questions for staff. So perhaps if the Alder wants to follow up.
I will follow up. I will follow up on the side. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for staff on item 14? Alder Uguer.
Thank you, Mayor. Director Mikulajewski, we have a situation here where a great deal of progress has been made, and there's a lot of reason for optimism about the success of this experiment. But we do have a company that's going to have to raise a lot of money, you know, whether they're located here or elsewhere. How do you analyze their ability to carry out the guarantee provisions?
Thank you, Alder. That's a great question. And I think there are a couple of different ways to look at that. One is we've structured the payments from the loan over 6 phases that will be tied to performance, and in particular tied to the amount of increment that they're generating. So the first step is that we are phasing our payments out of that loan over time once they can demonstrate that they've generated a certain amount of increment. So that helps kind of ensure that we're going to have increment that's available to repay the loans that we provide. Secondly, though, in addition to the corporate guarantee that Rialto Fusion would be providing, we will have a mortgage against the property. So that if we absolutely had to, there is an avenue to, through that mortgage, receive that payment. And I think Dan Rolfs may have some additional ideas as well that he wanted to share.
Certainly. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. The other part, Alder, is the way that this is structured, and just a tip of the cap to the folks at Rialto for working with us on this. It was a lot of back and forth, so we appreciate that as staff. The way that this is structured is that on the, let's say, glass half full version of this, if things go well, and they are able to complete their project and move forward with all of those incremental revenue, or the incremental value creation, essentially building new things, adding new value to that property, we will not, as the city, make any payment until that value actually comes on. So if they do something this year, we won't actually see it on the tax rolls for another year and change because of just the way the property tax system works. So we are, in that way, sort of protected even further if they're, you know, as they're moving forward with their redevelopment. So that's the sort of glass half full side. On the other end, if something doesn't go well for whatever reason, that's something that we as staff have to sort of think about. It's obviously an exciting technology and hopefully something that they're successful with, and we want them to be successful. But if something doesn't go well, the benefit of this structure is that, you know, if you look at looking at the slides, I think it's slide number 12, where it talks about the different tranches of payment. If we get to, let's say, payment 3 and things don't go well after that, we've only put that out and we've already been repaid a substantial portion of what's been put out into that project. So if there's sort of a very, very bad thing happens, all of a sudden the company doesn't exist for whatever reason, our actual exposure in the district and the city itself is very limited because we've taken this sort of long time to put the money in, and we're putting it in these separate tranches.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Matt. That's very helpful.
Thank you, Alder Figueroa Cole. Additional questions?
Yes, and I gotta go to PC, but quickly, if this is approved by PC, by finance and then council, what are the next steps? When is this project will take off? Do you have that information?
Sure. So first and foremost, the company at some point in the future will need to make a decision on what site that they want to locate in, because again, they're considering this site, but they're considering another site as well. Assuming that they select the Madison location, we would finalize a TIF loan agreement, which would be similar to the term sheet that you have within the packet. And we would then also proceed with the amendment of TID 54 to get Joint Review Board approval of this loan. And as indicated by Dominic earlier, ideally, they would be under construction by the end of this year if they were to select the Madison facility.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Any other questions for staff? Seeing none, then on item 14, it has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Alder Matthews.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to share, I know that I think Dominic mentioned this, but right, this phase at this site at Oscar Mayer is not going to be using any actual fuel for the nuclear fission. I've only gotten a handful of emails about this, and they're pretty equal. Excited about it versus concerned, but the one concern that the main concern I heard from folks who were concerned is in the use of the fuel for the fission, for the fusion, and that there are some potential concerns with that. But just to put it in the most plain of words, the tritium is that fuel, and that is not coming on site at all to Oscar Mayer with this project. I got that confirmed. So just in case anyone else got any emails about that or has been Googling and looking into this, that's the main thing that comes up. So
thank you, Alder. Is there any other discussion on item 14? Seeing none, then item 14 has been moved and seconded. Is there any objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor? Seeing no objection, we'll record a unanimous vote in favor of item 14. And we will move on to item 15. And I will introduce it, but then Alder Madison, I'm going to ask you to take the chair for any questions on this presentation. So item 15 is Legistar 93375, a 2025 year-end review and update on the 2027 budget outlook. And so we'll hand it over to Director Schmidtke and Budget Director Coe for the presentation. And again, Alder Madison, I'll cede the chair to you if your colleagues have any questions after the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. We do have a presentation for the committee. I think Christine is on and will share it. There we go. Great. So in this presentation, we will cover what the actuals look like for the 2025 for the city. And that would encompass revenues and expenditures. Take a look at how that impacts the condition of the city's general fund. Just a quick review of the outlook for the year we're in right now, 2026, and the timeline on the budget to actual projections process that we perform during the year. And then finally, we'll walk through the 2027 budget process. All right, starting with actual revenues for 2025. Revenues finished very strong, about 4% above budget, focused primarily on investment income. We continue to have persistent above average interest rates. And while we have in our budget forecasts assume a slow decline in those interest rates, just given what was at certain points in time before current geopolitical events have occurred, was expected to be a decline in interest rates as the Federal Reserve was watching inflation fall. That has not been the case. And so we were quite a bit above budget amounts, about $9.5 million in investment income. For ambulance charges for service, that was the other very strong area. That reflects a process that's been underway for the last several years to put into place at the state level a Medicaid waiver that would basically benefit providers of ambulance services, such as the city of Madison, and be able to capture more Medicaid dollars. This was adopted through state law a few years ago. Then the State Department of Health Services worked on a waiver. We worked through a waiver process with the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services at the federal level. And then that was worked out over basically in 2024, I believe. We received payments for services provided in calendar years 2023 and 2024. Those payments were all received in 2025. And so that accounts for a large share of that variance in charges for services. And then we continue to have strong building permit revenues just based on construction in the city. And that was above forecast as well. Just a little more background, kind of give you a sense of how our yield, basically what our interest rate has been on our investment income. And we this just shows that continued persistent higher level, which really kind of reached this level in 2023 and has continued over the last few years. We also have what's called a mark-to-market adjustment. That's an accounting convention that needs to be addressed in every budget or in every financial statement that we complete. And that really reflects whether we would take a loss or a gain if, for example, we had to sell all of our investments at the end of the relevant calendar year. We took a large loss in 2022 as interest rates rapidly increased. And we've seen gains since then as those inflation or those interest rates have stabilized, but at a much higher level. Next slide. All right, turning to expenditures for 2025. Expenditures were about $4 million below budget. That can be attributed primarily to vacant positions, some additional revenues from the municipal court, and then underspending on budget amounts for contracts, particularly in the assessor, information technology, and community development division. And so this slide just shows the top 5 by dollar difference, which again, given police and fire are the largest budgets in the city, those would be the largest dollar differences. And then traffic engineering is almost all related to vacant positions. IT is related to some vacant positions, some contracts, and then community development is primarily contracts. And then by percentage difference, you can see municipal court, the Office of the Independent Monitor, the council, assessor, and traffic engineering. So that difference is about 1%. And then by functional area, again, general government, that'll be the mayor and council. It's about 2% or so, plus the administrative departments. And so those are just the variances by those functional areas. In the miscellaneous area, it was over budget slightly. That's due primarily to two factors. One is, or the largest is increases in costs related to challenges to property assessments and the legal costs and expert witness costs associated with those cases. Which effectively have not been budgeted for and will have to be addressed in future year budgets. The other element there is the city's contribution to the zoo operating costs, which were slightly above budget. All right, turning to the fund balance and outlook. So given that basically revenues exceeded expenditures by about $18 million. We have a very strong general fund balance, about 30% of the budget. We had some slight changes in what we call the assigned fund balance. And we do project, again, based on the city's 5-year financial plan, that 30% would come down to close to our 15% minimum by using fund balance to help balance the budget and maintain current service levels over the next 5 years. This is just a shorter term history, a little more of the numbers behind the fund balance since 2022. You can see how that fund balance has grown, and most of that is due to the positive variance of revenues over expenditures, driven primarily by those higher investment earnings. And in the early years of 22, 23, and 24, it's pretty significant underspending compared to budget. And then again, as I mentioned earlier, this is the 2026 5-year outlook that's in the 2026 adopted budget. It will be updated for the 2027 budget, but as you can see, the assumption is that $40 million of fund balance would be used to basically address that imbalance, that structural deficit between the cost of maintaining current service levels each year and what the city can raise in terms of revenues under state law limitations. Just the preliminary outlook for 2026 is we do expect revenues for investment income to be at maybe slightly above the projected $14 million. We could see actually a mark-to-market loss in 2026 due to higher inflation and higher interest rates, as I referenced earlier, caused by geopolitical events. We do expect other revenues to be slightly above budget. That'll be driven primarily by higher ambulance, building permit, and room tax revenues. But again, we expect that to be much lower than the variance in 2025. The expenditure side, we do expect fleet costs to exceed budget, again, due to higher fuel costs or higher fuel rates, for example. And we do expect expenditures to be, again, closer to budget. And then just a reminder that the 2026 budget, as adopted, was very near the maximum amount allowed under the expenditure restraint limit. So there's not room to add budget authority from fund balance in 2026. We do have a $2 million contingent reserve built into the budget. We already, there have already been draws approved on that, for example, for MadCap. And we also still have one more $1 million installment payment on the shelter endowment yet to make. Contingent reserve would be a logical source for that, but we also are monitoring these fuel costs, for example, and other costs that may exceed budget, and may have to look at options to address that. And I'll turn it over to Christine to take us through the budget projection process and the 2027 outlook.
Good afternoon, everyone. So Dave gave a high-level overview of what we're expecting, how we're expecting 2026 to trend. We are starting our formal budget projection process where the budget analyst team works with every single agency to project how they are spending for the rest of the year. So for the month of June, we will be doing that analysis with agencies and have meetings with every single department to determine what their projections are for the year. We take a few weeks in July to compile those projections, and a file will be introduced to Common Council by title only at the July 21st meeting, and then the Finance Committee will have the full projection on July 27th, and we'll give a presentation that explains all of the proposed transfers and appropriations within that resolution, and that gets adopted by Council on August 4th. And we are at the same time moving ahead with the 2027 budget development process. I've shared this calendar with the Finance Committee before, but this is just to look at all of our major dates for 2027. I think at our last Finance Committee meeting, we did an overview of the capital budget requests that were submitted earlier this year, and the capital budget will be introduced on September 8th. But right now, we're really switching our focus to the operating budget, which funds all core city services. Our kickoff for agencies will be June 9th, so next Tuesday, and that's the point at which we release the mayor's message and guidance for agencies to build their budget. We are still working behind the scenes on finalizing cost to continue numbers and setting the base budget for the request process. So there's still some moving pieces, but you'll have a lot more information when that gets when the official instructions are released next week. And then 6 weeks later, on July 17th, agencies will submit their requests. It takes our team about 2 weeks to process all of the documents that we get. So end of July, early August, all of those requests will be available publicly on our website. We do an internal agency briefing process in August, and then we will release the executive budget in early October with Finance Committee briefings with this group in mid-October. I mentioned that currently, we are in the process of finalizing cost to continue. Cost to continue is the first step of planning for the next year's budget by looking at, by creating an estimate of how much it will cost to continue the same level of services in the upcoming year. So there are a number of things we do looking at citywide adjustments as well as agency-specific changes. On the citywide level, we're looking at revenue projections and other funding sources like fund balance. Dave mentioned looking at trends on interest earnings and making sure that those revenues are projected as close as we can. We also do citywide adjustments to personnel costs for salaries and benefits. I think, as many of you know, personnel costs are the largest expense in the city budget. So we will take a snapshot of our current salaries and benefits, make projections for vacant positions, make assumptions on cost of living adjustments, steps and longevity increases, et cetera, as well as put in placeholders for anticipated increases to health insurance rates, health insurance premiums, and other benefits rates. And we also will allocate some of our internal service funds, such as the insurance and workers' comp, which are interdepartmental billings and charges. For the agency-specific adjustments, similar to the projection process, the budget analyst team will meet with every single department to understand their needs, what they anticipate in terms of service changes for 2027, and we'll propose adjustments based on that. So this includes removing any one-time funding or expenses in 2026 for a one-time program that might not continue. It also includes identifying partial year commitments that were identified that started in 2026 and we need to make sure are fully annualized in the upcoming year. This year, there are several large partial year commitments, including the 10th ambulance and the fire department, and library and park staffing for the Imagination Center at Rhino Park. So we want to make sure that we have that fully covered in 2027. We look at contracts for services to make sure any built-in cost increases on multi-year contracts are factored in, and other changes like utility rate increases, and making sure that to build in all of those expenses into the base budget. We are still developing that estimate and getting everything into our financial system. So I don't have a precise number to give you. Again, we'll share that during kickoff next week. But some of the major cost drivers that we'll have more information about, as I mentioned, salaries and benefits are the largest expense. Compared to the increases we saw in the 2026 budget, the base increases are comparable in that we always plan for steps in longevity, cost of living adjustments, and some rate of increase on health premiums and benefits rates. This year, the total increase in salaries and benefits will be we're expecting around $11 million, and this is higher than prior years, again, because we're annualizing partial year commitments. We added over 20 FTEs last year between ambulance, Imagination Center, and a few others. So that is partly driving this number. Another area where we're expecting a large increase is in fuel. Right now, we're projecting about a 1.5 million increase in fleet for fuel costs, which is about a 44% increase over the 2026 budget. And this is based on some internal simulations as well as external, Federal Energy Department reports. So we don't have a precise number, but trying to gather as many data points as possible, have come up with this estimate. Fleet is an internal service fund, and its costs are billed out to all of its user departments. So this is not all, this will not all fall to the general fund, but the majority of it will, as the largest users of fleet services are streets, police, and fire. So a large portion of that fuel increase will be hitting the general fund. In addition, we're seeing a trend of higher costs for software and technology. Much of this is associated with cost increases as software moves to the cloud, and software providers have different licensing structure changes, as well as the city implementing new systems to meet demands of agencies and other users. And we're also working on the general fund subsidy to Metro Transit. If you recall from the budget discussions for 2026, this year's budget included a sizable increase to that subsidy, and we're continuing to monitor that agency's needs. One additional kind of preview into the budget guidance for 2027 is this will be another year where we're talking a lot about expenditure restraint and the expenditure restraint incentive program. We've discussed this a lot going into the 2026 budget, but I know that we have some new alders in this committee and within the whole body. But as a reminder, the Expenditure Restraint Incentive Program, or ERIP, is a state program that limits growth in year-over-year expenditures by a factor of 60% of net new construction plus inflation. So this is really capping how fast our expenditures can grow on an annual basis. And compliance with ERIP provides, if we comply with ERIP, we receive a state aid payment in the next year. So meeting the ERIP requirement in 27 will qualify us for a state aid payment in 2028. And the city has qualified for this payment since this program was created in the 1990s. And in the 26 budget, we have about $9 million in state aid through this program. So it's a significant amount of funding. For the 2027 budget, the estimated growth in the ERIP limit is 4.6%. So that is the target we're looking for in the upcoming budget guidance. And again, we'll provide more information next week. Just looking ahead to the rest of June, there are a number of meetings and community engagement sessions that the alders and council office have been very involved in. So today is June 1st. This is our kind of preview and look back at the prior year. Highlighted in yellow are the 3 community engagement sessions that are happening across the city, where there will be a number of city agencies presenting and providing information about the services that they provide, and those will be grouped thematically and located across the city. And there will be a very brief presentation by finance about our budget process, as well as time for Q&A. I mentioned June 9th is our budget kickoff. And then June 29th, we'll have another finance committee meeting where we'll provide a more in-depth overview of the operating budget instructions and can answer any questions at that time. We do have another finance committee meeting on June 15th, but due to some staffing schedules, we're not able to provide that detailed briefing earlier. So those are all the slides we have, and we can take any questions you may have.
All right. Do we have any questions for our brilliant finance staff? Well, I am shocked. Alder Evers?
Yeah, I guess this is for Director Schmidtke. You mentioned, I think, some concerns about the economy, recognition that I think this was in the portion of your presentation about mark-to-market, that higher interest rates could result in, I think you said that we get dinged by a few million on the mark-to-market. Is that correct? And that if we went into recession and interest rates lowered, that it would have the opposite effect, potentially? Does that make sense, my question?
Possibly, yeah. It might not necessarily be a recession, and, how that plays out, Alder Evers, is, difficult to say. We could have a combination of higher inflation and a recession.
The wonderful stagflation, yes.
Right, right. But yes, we're in a position right now that if interest rates continue or go higher, we could see a mark-to-market loss this year. But again, there's a lot of volatility right now in what might happen, and we're kind of seeing that play out in fuel costs. We are seeing, and I didn't talk about this in the presentation, but we are seeing higher interest costs for tax-exempt debt. And so when we issue debt in late summer, we could see higher interest rates there. So at the moment, we are seeing the possibility or projecting that there would be a mark-to-market loss. Now, nowhere in the magnitude of what we saw in 2022, but definitely a change in the trend of what we've seen over the last 3 years with mark-to-market gains.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
Are there other questions? If not, I would take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second. Thank you. I don't think there does not look to be any disagreement about adjourning. So with unanimous support, we are adjourned. Have a good night, everybody.